Okay, so here's my preliminary comments. The reason I'm making these comments is just because there are more new people here than there are old people. So usually we have a fairly small number of people in this group. I mean, we're very happy to have a lot of people. It's just that, most of us are new, having been attracted by the topic apparently. So here's my sort of comments on the ethos of the group. So I apologize for just reading this. I figured I would not say everything I wanted to say if I didn't write it down. So the way this group has been working for a few years is we welcome a great diversity of people, regardless of what kind of background they have in philosophy or not. So there are people in the group who've had very little philosophy background. And then there are people, there's graduate students and professors in philosophy. So there's a very wide range. And we want everyone across this entire spectrum to really feel comfortable sharing their ideas, their interpretations of the text and so on, regardless of how familiar they are with the material. So, it's not a class, as it were, where there are some who teach and then others who take the role of students. It's supposed to be, as far as possible, a sort of equitable discussion. And so for that reason, we tend to discourage participants from taking the role of expert. Sometimes there's a temptation to take a role of an expert when someone knows a whole lot about a particular topic. And we discourage that for a couple of reasons. One is because experts tend to become lecturers, and that discourages the sort of wide, the broad participation and discussion. And then as a rule, in my experience, people who believe they're experts are often so sure that they know something that they're sort of prevented from learning anything new because they already know. But on the other hand, we don't really encourage, expert lecturers. We are very happy to have people in the discussion who do know stuff about the kind of topics we're going to be talking about. I mean, I myself do not, frankly. I'm pretty new to this, to Deleuze and all of these ideas. And so we are very happy to have people who have particular areas of expertise that are relevant to the discussion. But what we prefer is that people who have particular areas of expertise serve as sort of resources for the group rather than sort of expert lecturers. So, when we're struggling with a particular topic that some of us might not know much about, but somebody else might, then that person can contribute their particular expertise to that topic, to the discussion. But all of that activity should be for the purpose of helping all of us in the group come to a better understanding of the text. So the whole ethos of this group is to try to work together with one another to help all of us come to a better understanding of the material. So that's my sort of introductory comment on the ethos of the group. Because there's so many new people, I thought, maybe it's a good idea for us to introduce ourselves. The downside of that is this could take forever because there's a whole lot of people. So yeah, like Hunter's over there. Oh God, this gives me a chance to no. So what I recommend, I'm hoping that we can introduce ourselves very quickly, just to give each of us a chance to say who we are and our relative familiarity with the material. So I'll start. My name's Nevitt Reeser. I'm sort of the, I guess you could say, administrator for these discussions. And I teach philosophy at Texas State. I've done that for a few years. My familiarity with Deleuze is pretty limited. I've struggled through parts of Difference and Repetition with Chase, but I struggle with that material quite a bit. And frankly, I haven't understood a lot of what I've read in Anti-Oedipus so far. I've been trying to work through a secondary source that Chase suggested, but I'm lazy, and so I haven't got very far through that. And as far as like background material, I know a little Kant, less Freud, and no Lacan. So I am one of those people who is going to be one of the lesser knowledgeable people in this group. So would someone else like to introduce themselves?
I can go next. And then would it be best if after we go, we call on someone who hasn't gone? That way there's not just awkward pause. Does that sound good, Nevin?
I'm having trouble understanding what you're saying.
So after someone introduces themselves, they call on someone next. So that way.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. I hereby call upon Jackson Kierkegaard.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Jackson Barr. I'm a philosophy undergraduate at Texas State University. My experience with Deleuze deals with his biographies of different philosophers. I like his Bergson and Leibniz books. I'm excited to be here and to help solve Hunter's fascism problem, right? Referring back to that preface and introduction. So thank you for your time. And with that, I'll give it to Hunter.
Okay, hi everybody, real quick. My name is Hunter. I'm a master's student of philosophy at Texas State. I'm almost done both with that and with this introduction. I like books like this one. And I have a moderate, constant feeling of inadequacy regarding everything. Actually, I was about to say specific things, but then I remembered everything, especially my brief foray into Hegel and psychoanalysis. Okay, anyway, Chase, what's up? It's you.
I'll also be brief. So I'm a master's student at UTSA, and so I've read a little bit of Deleuze before. Some of difference of repetition, and kind of dabbled in almost all of his books to a certain degree. So I've read maybe about, I think roughly about half of Anti-Oedipus, although some parts I've read a few times. So this is a book that I'm definitely not an expert in, definitely not. This is a book that I'm definitely going to be, I think, much more learning, but at the same time, yeah, so I have a little bit of experience with Deleuze and Guattari and 1,000 Plateaus and whatnot too. So I'm going to try to not kind of presuppose that people also have, I've read Difference of Repetition or 1,000 Plateaus or whatnot, but at the same time, my own way of understanding these concepts in Anti-Oedipus will be kind of structured to a certain degree by those texts, but I'll try to somewhat separate that out, or at least, I think if it helps, at least make those that kind of extension into the other works or not. But yeah, I'm going to try not to be too much of an expert bro, and more try to kind of facilitate things. I think that's so Nevin and I kind of talked about this, try to come to something where we could, have a good balance between, okay, so this thing is, I said I was going to be quick, and yeah, whatever. Okay, so a book like Anti-Oedipus, and I think Deleuze in general too. So there's so many references, there's so many links and connections to everything else that to talk about the text itself requires many tangents, and in a way that's kind of intentional, is the idea is to try to connect you with the outside world, increase connectivity in a sense. But at the same time, that kind of, I think our group already has a tendency for tangents in a way, but from a Deleuzian perspective, I think that's not a bad thing. So I think it'll be somewhat difficult to keep us, I think, focused, but we should still probably try to come back to the text and whatnot. But at the same time, going back to the text will then lead us out of the text because it's machinic, you know. But that's kind of my take on it, I guess, from a general perspective. That wasn't that long, I guess. Let's go. You know, the person who really got me into Deleuze, with a fantastic elevator pitch, Joey. Yeah, what's going on?
Hello. Yeah, I studied philosophy recently at Texas State as an undergrad, not currently in school, just doing this reading group. A few years ago, I was first traumatized by, we read Difference and Repetition in this group, actually. And yeah, ever since then, I've kind of just had like a fascination with Deleuze, although it was just an experience of just like, whoa, I have a long way to go before I can understand this guy. And so, yeah, everything I feel like I read is like in the shadow of that summer. Painful is one word for it. Yeah, I think that's my introduction. How about Jonathan Ponder?
How's it going, guys? Yeah, my name is Jonathan. I just graduated at Texas State undergrad. One of my majors was philosophy. The other one was political science. And I've been asking around if there's like groups like this, and I was referred to this group. I forgot by who, but I'm not very familiar. All right, can you hear me? All right. Yeah, I've heard many good things about Deleuze from Marquez. So that's the only reference point that I have for this author. But yeah. And I will call on Eric.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eric. I just took a master's degree from Texas State. My previous degree was at University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Philosophy, literature. I like soccer, margaritas, long walks on the beach. And best vacation I ever had was in Malaysia, in the east of Malaysia, off of a little town called Sabah. Go next.
Hi. Interestingly, you mentioned Malaysia. I lived there for 12 years, so it's very close to my heart. Anyhow, I have a PhD in genocide studies, and I'm here because I'm interested in philosophy. I have always been, and I wanted to join a group similar to this one, and I had the pleasure of bumping into Hunter some time ago, and he was the one who recommended to join his group. So I went to the literature session on Monday. It was a lot of fun, and this is the second time I'm intervening. Thank you. I think I'll just ask Nathan to be the next person. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Saba. My name's Nathan. I'm a master's MA Lit student at Texas State, and Saba told me about this group. We were going to read Anti-Oedipus together anyway, as at the same time. And so she texted me and said this was happening. I have a decent background in Marx, Freud, Lacan, and I've all, anybody who's into critical theory and that kind of thing is aware of this book, but I hadn't really wrestled with it at this point. And I've read some stuff in affect theory that kind of refers back to Deleuze a lot and seems to sort of be like the big guy. So here I am, looking forward to it. Thanks. Oh, I got a call on somebody.
It's your cue, Hunter.
Dennis H.
Sorry. Yes, my name is Dennis. I'm working on a master's at UTSA, or attempting to finish one. Let's see. My background, I'm pretty familiar with Freud, having read from, if you want to divide Freud up into periods, from stuff from early, middle, and late. I've dabbled in some Lacan, a couple of seminars, but most of my Lacan comes from Laplanche and Melanie Klein. But and I struggled through some of difference in repetition over the summer, but I had something come up, so I wasn't able to finish. But I've had this book on my shelf for years. I've tried to get through it a couple times with no success, but I felt like this time around, having much more knowledge concerning Freud and some Marx, the Lacan, that I'd give it one more try. So that's why I'm here. Mario, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mario. I'm in undergrad at Texas State. I major in philosophy and also international relations. I'm currently at an airport. My knowledge with Deleuze is very surface level. I struggled a lot to get like halfway into what is philosophy. So I figured it'd be better to maybe start with this group. So I received an email and I decided to join. I'm actually pretty excited from what I've read so far. But yeah, just looking forward to learning with you. Call on Keenan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Can you hear me? I am a total amateur. I'm not in school or anything, but for the past 18 months or so, maybe 2 years, started getting into Marx. Since then, dipped my feet into some German idealism, Kant, Hegel, and also been reading Nietzsche for a while. And that's basically that. Let me call on Aiden.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Aiden. I'm also probably in the amateur class, but yeah, for a while now, Eric, Keenan, and I have been doing a study group, and we've been going over Kant and Hegel and various other readings. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Excited to learn more. I'll go ahead and call on Ripley.
Hi, I'm Ripley. I'm a undergraduate at Texas State. I haven't read any Deleuze before. I know a bit about who he is, but not that much. So I don't have much background in this. Also haven't read much psychoanalysis, so don't know much about that. Who hasn't gone?
Deirdre and Ray, I think, and Ed.
Okay, Deirdre.
Hey, can you hear me? All right. I wasn't sure if this headset was set up right today. Yeah, I'm Deirdre Ann. Pronouns are they, them. Since none of the rest of you have your pronouns up or said them, I will use they, them for you as well if I, for the most part, unless you tell me otherwise. I'm a master's student at UTSA. First, really, I'm doing the slow boat because I work full time for the Air Force during the day. So I'm on still in my first year, but had contemporary continental last semester. I mean, back in the fall with Chase, and got a little tiny bit of Deleuze in there, and then was in the recent group that I guess Chase still has ongoing for difference in repetition, but that's really all of the Deleuze I have. I'm particularly interested in philosophy of technology and spatiality, Kantian and Schopenhauerian spaces and understandings of space and time. And I'll pick on Ray since it's the only person left that I know of the 3 people I know in the group.
Hi, my name's Ray. I'm a master's student, ETSA in philosophy, and my pronouns are he, him. And yeah, this is my first time reading Anti-Oedipus, so I found it kind of confusing, but hopefully I'll take away something during this reading group. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Am I the last person? Oh, and I'll have my camera fixed by next week for sure.
Ed.
Okay, Ed.
Hey, I teach international relations in the political science department at Texas State University. I'm very fortunate to be part of this group for, I don't know, 2 years, a year and a half. And I know nothing about Deleuze, but there were other authors we read in the philosophy seminar that I hadn't read before. So this is a real good group to just try to work through difficult material and just help each other out. So good to see everybody here. I think I'm the last one that made the introduction.
So I guess I was going to say something now. I can't remember what it was. This is typical. I've always been this way, and I'm getting older, and it's getting worse. Well, since I can't remember whatever I was going to say, Chase, would you like to kick us off? Or no, I didn't mean to say it that way.
Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, that's great to hear everyone's background and everything. So yeah, kind of like what I was saying before, there's a lot of references that they kind of expect you to know, Deleuze and Guattari, to a certain degree, and that can be very tricky because they kind of presuppose that you're reading the book kind of in their own milieu, which is basically 1970s France intellectuals, and that could be very tricky to find out what the hell's going on, especially as, so they seem to expect you to know psychoanalysis, particularly Freudian and Lacanian, and usually a lot of the cases surrounding that. And so I think one of the things, trying to kind of go back to remember my first time reading this, you're struck by like, what the hell's going on? But who's Schreiber, Judge Schreiber, Daniel Schreiber? So that's a pretty interesting case there. So I think one of the big things in here also is they're talking about schizophrenia, and you know, there's a popular image of schizophrenia, and to see the kind of how they're talking about something quite different, though related to that kind of popular image of the kind of an institutionalized kind of person who's suffering from the condition of schizophrenia. So what they're talking about with schizophrenia is more something that isn't necessarily a person, but more kind of a process or a style of thinking. You could also think of it as something like that. And I think that helps to kind of see what's going on with that, but also, you know, why are they using schizophrenics as a kind of model that they're then basing a theory of desire in the unconscious off of that? It can be, so they kind of just throw this at you immediately, and that can be very confusing and disconcerting, I think, to a certain degree too. I think one way you could think of it is that, so in order to understand the unconscious or desire or a lot of kind of processes that are going on with humans or life or whatnot, I think usually a pretty good method is to see instances where there's some kind of alteration of what we take as the normal process, and to kind of see where these deviations are and follow those, and then work from there to have more of a general model where we can have some kind of idea of like a normalization. But I think the problem is that we have kind of a habituated way of seeing the normal case. So therefore they're looking at these other cases in order to see that there's some kind of insight there. And the problem is, so all of this is it's a critique of psychoanalysis, although so this isn't a complete negation of psychoanalysis. They're not completely against Freud or Lacan, but it's definitely a critique of it. And you know, what are they critiquing in a lot of ways is this way of seeing schizophrenics as a kind of, so they psychotic, but seeing it in too much of a neurotic light. And instead they're trying to say that there's something we could actually get from looking at these cases of different ways of thinking. So you can think of, you know, there's a common, I guess somewhat common idea now, so it's known, neurodivergence, where people talk about the idea of, okay, there's things that are different about people's thinking, but it's not necessarily bad by being different. They're thinking somewhere along this lines, although it's kind of, well, I think it's at least one way to kind of get your foot in the door to see what is going on there. I think we'll definitely end up talking about this more, but that's one thing I think that's important to kind of note from the very beginning. And then, okay, so Judge Schreiber, I don't know, I wonder if anybody is really kind of familiar with this case. I've been reading his memoirs, Memoirs of My Nervous Illness. Very interesting. So okay, I'll just give like a short biography in case, but really, I would probably just look at his Wikipedia. And really, I mean, this thing is, I think, something like 400-500 pages. And really at times it's a bit much, but I think some kind of familiarity with this case, Judge Schreiber is really important. Not only because they use that example, but also they're specifically, so this case with Schreiber is really important because Freud made it a really famous case with his analysis of it. And that's why they're kind of going back and kind of rereading this Schreiber case and kind of somewhat using Freud, but also at times kind of reversing also this Freudian analysis, giving their own analysis of this case. So I think the way that they kind of expect you to know is that because it is a really famous case that Freud covered, but that's something where, okay, in, you know, 2022, what is that even the year? I don't even know. 2022 America, you know, Freud is kind of not, I wonder if, so I was briefly a psychology major, and I did study a little bit of Freud in I think a childhood development class, but I've heard that Freud is not even studied. You can get a bachelor's degree in psychology and never really hear the word Freud probably, which is seems pretty crazy. But I kind of wonder, you know, how many people have really heard of that? And that's kind of the thing is, they expect you to be familiar with these cases where for us, you know, we've probably heard of Freud and the Oedipus complex. That's usually the only thing. And that's where they were so saturated in that, in their environment, their intellectual environment, that's kind of what they're reacting against. So it's kind of strange that you have this case where they're so just saturated in Freud and a specific kind of Freudian analysis in Lacan to a certain degree as a kind of so there's the Lacan relation, and we'll get into that. There's that one's pretty complex too, but this Guattari, so he was a student of Lacan's and continued to be for a while. So understanding that, I think, is really important, but to see kind of, I think it's difficult to see what is at stake with, you know, a critique of the Oedipus complex in psychoanalysis, exactly because there's hardly any psychoanalysis going on here. The Oedipus complex, if it's ever mentioned, it's just completely laughed at. And so I think one of the challenging things also with this book is to see kind of where this really, how this actually goes along with other things that we are more concerned about generally. Because I think they give a pretty good case that, you know, these things connect to a way with, you know, capitalism, especially, to these things that are very much still affecting us, even more so now than in the 70s or whatnot. So I think trying to approach it from that angle is also important. Okay, so I've definitely talked way too long.
Can I ask a question, Chase?
Sure, yeah.
About the schizophrenia thing. So I wondered if I'm on the right track at all, if you think I am, with that the importance of schizophrenia is kind of is analogous to the man-nature dichotomy, and that the breakdown of that is important to this process that they're going through, that the man-nature and the schizophrenia, the seeing these as like as if they are actually also the malfunctioning systems, right? You got the judge with the sunbeams in his ass, right? That that they say really work, right? That they're a functioning system, right? And that's that seems to be important to look at the functioning system to them, as opposed to the malfunctioning system that schizophrenia focuses on. Is that the right direction? I don't know. Those are different things, right? The breakdown of the man-nature dichotomy is kind of a separate thing, I guess. But it seemed to me that there was kind of a, you know, the schizophrenia concept is one of seeing things as if they're like the person is like is two different natures, right, or multiple natures, and to me that kind of connected up to the man-nature dichotomy. Maybe I'm off there.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely right. So yeah, the idea of, you know, it works, you know, it from one perspective, you know, of course it's ridiculous, but their point is that doesn't really matter from perspective of the unconscious, that just needs to work. It just, and this is the whole, so they're kind of the one thing this book is about. If you had to give one word, it's desire. And, you know, what is special about desire for them? That's kind of their innovative theory. It's productive. So they're going to emphasize production as this model of desire and a model of the unconscious. And that's exactly the case. So they're talking about Schreiber as, you know, he has the sunlight, you know, could like come inside his body and do all these amazing things, produce all these feelings, connect all these different voices from history, from people he knew. And the thing is that he does feel something, and there is an effect, something is produced. And that's kind of the point they're getting there by saying that, okay, because so I'm not totally familiar with exactly what Freud's interpretation of Schreiber was, but I think there was something like, okay, well, I'll just give a kind of, I'm not saying that Freud actually said this because I don't know, but I think one of the cases they're trying to kind of say is that, you know, there's a way of thinking of Schreiber's, this is just simply some kind of imaginary projection of something, and therefore it doesn't really matter. It's just crazy, and we can forget about it. What they're trying to do is kind of reverse that and say, no, you know, maybe there is some kind of, you know, imaginary thing going on, but also there's something at the same time being produced, which is desire. And that's where they're going to really focus. And so the man-nature divide, that's something that, so I think ultimately what they're going to say about that is that's something that comes with a specific type of social organization or social production. I think they're going to say that that's something that's kind of you get with, I think, imperial despotism and whatnot, that it kind of comes about from there. And
they seem to be implying though that it's kind of like not real, that it's like that's and that made me think of I don't know if you're familiar with Thomas Berry at all, a philosopher, priest, but a student of Teilhard de Chardin, who talked about talks a lot about the fiction that we've created with the separation of nature and man, and they seem to be alluding to that. I think, but I saw that. I wanted to comment too. I saw the comments on Oedipus, and I wanted to mention your comments earlier. You know, Oedipus is really important. The idea of Oedipus, though, is very important in feminist thinking, and a lot of this stuff really seems to, I mean, even though I'm only like 2 chapters in, right? Parallels Haraway, who does not cite Deleuze at all, which is really interesting because she should have been aware of Deleuze, but Deleuze and Guattari. But Oedipus is incredibly important, I think, in third, fourth wave feminism as a counter position, right?
I had a connection with Nietzsche. I think maybe, you know, I know that Deleuze draws from Nietzsche, and, you know, he's somebody I know a little bit about. So, you know, I tend to try to connect to things I know. But, you know, Nietzsche has this sense that, you know, he says there is no such thing as the soul atom. You know, there is no unitary soul, and that we are constituted by a whole complex of drives and, you know, psychological forces and so on, that there isn't any single unitary coherent identity. And that, you know, that what I experience as an identity is actually kind of some kind of vector sum of all these forces that are tangling with one another within me. And I'm wondering, so one of the questions I had, I was wondering if when he talks about schizoanalysis, if that's part of what's going on there, is thinking of you know, not just the human mind. I mean, frankly, I think everything as a confluence of forces, you know, the whole entire cosmos as just a confluence of interacting forces. And then part of that, you know, these flows maybe that they're talking about. And then part of that in terms of what I experience as an identity, there is no identity at all. There's just these forces. So is that, am I wrong to make that connection between this notion of schizoanalysis and the sort of Nietzschean notion of being no unitary soul?
Yeah, that resonates with some of the stuff I've been exposed to. I was going to reference, I was listening to like a lecture series online, just the very beginning. It's Todd May. It's like on Deleuze, just these like long lectures, but they're on YouTube. It's an introduction to difference and repetition. But in the first video, he's just introducing just the context of Deleuze in general. But he talks about Deleuze and Guattari is kind of reacting against the kind of structuralist idea of reducing identities to like this or that, to like one single this or that. In the case of psychoanalysis, this is the Oedipus complex, whereas they like refer to other, this particular lecture referred to other structuralists, which I know very little about structuralism in general, but of just other structuralists who want to reduce us to like, you know, economic relations or I'm not sure other things, but he referenced like particularly psychoanalysis, economic relations people. And he says like Deleuze and Guattari are trying to offer this alternative where sure, like identities are happening, but they're not reducible to like one single thing. And I think, yeah, when we think like the Oedipus complex, I think it's, and again, I haven't read Lacan and Freud. I don't know how much that unfolds, how it's supposed to unfold, but my impression is that my superficial understanding of Oedipus complex is reducing us to like my whole entire personality. My identity is built around how I relate to like my mother and father, this triangulation, this like I'm stuck in interacting with the world, relating to others as I've learned to from that particular relation. And my impression is that this schizoanalysis, and you know, they reference in the book, first chapter, like the schizophrenic out for a walk is someone who's just not gonna allow themselves to kind of be boxed into that relation.
Yeah, and I agree with Nevin's observation, and Joey, you know, I do detect a lot of Nietzsche coming out in these early stages of the argument. I want to just, and I appreciate Deirdre and bringing up that. I think it's really important, you know, confounding the nature-man dichotomy. I think that also in its way harkens back to Nietzsche. I just wanted to throw this word out there because I think it's important. But what I see part of the value of schizoid analysis, or the schizoid, or what they're trying to capture is deterritorialization at work, right? Like, and it fits into this, you know, confounding the man-nature dichotomy. So, you know, having sunbeams in your ass is you know, is smashing that division between self and world, right? And also between man and divinity, between man and nature. I mean, it just that one image, right, seems to cut across a few traditional divisions. And I think that's why they latch on to schizoid visions of Judge Schreiber, because they do fly in the face of traditional analytic, you know, structures and boxing things. You know, what Adorno would call identity thinking, right? I think part of their project here is similar to Adorno's project. It's an attack on identity thinking and in search of the non-identical. But I might be stretching a little bit too much there to bring some affinity with Adorno.
I think the Adorno connection is pretty accurate. So yeah, Adorno was definitely also doing a kind of Freud, Marx to a certain degree, with some, I think some Nietzsche as well too. I don't think have I read Adorno? I'm not sure, but definitely the way you're talking about critiquing identity thing. So difference repetition, that's mainly what it is a critique of the philosophical notion of identity. And that's definitely carried through, although there's a lot of change somewhat in the terminology from that, but also a little bit in the kind of conceptual architecture or whatnot, that they probably wouldn't like those words, but it's definitely so. Nevitt, what you're saying about Nietzsche and forces, kind of, okay, there's no fixed identities. There's just this play of forces and whatnot. So that's definitely a large degree what is going on. I think with their whole idea of, desiring machines and these different syntheses, to a large degree, something like that is where they're trying to get at, that things are more about, connections, couplings, and this process of production, and that is what is primary. And so I think there's this huge influence of Spinoza on this, and I think that's kind of where. So when I read about the man-nature divide, no, actually nature, and the human and also industry, these are all connected on the same level. This plane of immanence, I guess they would say that in a Thousand Plateaus, but immanence just meaning it's all kind of on one playing field where things can interact with each other. And that is this sphere of production, which is also the sphere of desire. And those aren't disconnected, where, there's so what they're really attacking there is, first this idea that desires is a kind of subjective thing, a very human thing, and that nature is something that's completely different, that's objective, and that the human kind of stands above nature as this domain within a domain, as Spinoza said. And so what Spinoza and also Deleuze and Guattari, kind of taking after Spinoza, are doing is they're trying to challenge that idea that there's a disconnection where nature is kind of off to the side. So for Spinoza, it'd be, God, Deus sive natura, God or nature, where or is an inclusive disjunction, very important. So that's, I think, where they're really getting at. And also that's connected with Spinoza, who's saying that really the nature is productive, and that is what is really primary. And you can see that in these other facets, but humans are not totally independent of that. Instead, we're just a modification of that. We're a mode of that same productive ability that is also nature or God. And they're definitely, something like that is what they're getting at, I think, with the man-nature dichotomy, which also reminded me, okay, so for the few people I think we read Alfred North Whitehead's Process of Reality, and he talks about the bifurcation of nature, I think he says, and makes the same case too, that we tend to think of, cultural and natural, and instead we need to think simply on a level of, how can, from nature, do we get, the production of something like culture, or the production of something like the human. And, from the same way, thinking of things in terms of product and production. So there's obviously a kind of a Marxist thing going on there, but also you can see that, okay, how do we understand the production of identity also, these different identities? And then from there, once you kind of see how these things are somewhat contingent by being produced, you can also kind of start to critique them and whatnot. So I think that's a pretty, that's a good way of trying to understand kind of the broad system that they're kind of trying to connect here.
It would be nice to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Chase. Let's see, we're at 8 o'clock, but I wanted to make sure before it was too late, if we could sort of lay a groundwork for terminology with desiring machines and bodies without organs, and sort of get that ironed out. I've been trying to do it myself, but I would love to hear what you and Hunter also. You guys seem to have a pretty firm handle on it. So what, I don't know, what do you guys think, or anyone else?
Wait, okay, is anybody speaking right now? Okay, am I interrupting anybody? No? Okay, great. Do I sound normal? Can you hear me? Good? Okay, great, fantastic.
Great,
Okay,
Hunter.
that's awesome. Thank you, as always. Thank you, Chase. I just want to say really quickly, instead of typing and typing and typing, as I've been doing for the last like 5 minutes, I only stopped because I needed to pee. I wanted to just respond to Joey making this interesting point. I want to talk about bodies without organs, and I have a question to I want to talk about bodies without organs, I have a question to ask, and I have a response to Joey. This is my 3-part little talk. First off, Joey, I was talking about the difference between, well, I just made kind of this kind of offhand, like, oh, the modern wave of contemporary psychoanalytic discourse, I pronounce that weirdly, discourse around Freud and Lacan tends to deal with usually echoing from lessons of Lacan, bringing out what's implicit in Freud, making explicit what's implicit in Freud. And Lacan himself was a structural linguist and was really focused on the structure of language and of mind. And he was really interested in epistemology. He was like a hair's breadth away from being a really boring analytic epistemology semantics guy, in my opinion. He was one weird day. Yeah, structuralist, yeah. And that's why people call Zizek like the last structuralist. That's what people have said before. Yes, and as Nevid is pointing out in the chat right now, Lacan points to the unconscious as a linguistic affect. Lacan argues, and I happen to find this argument compelling, that Freud's notion of the unconscious isn't a substantial wealth of unthinkable thoughts or a lake of ideas hidden within the mind or the consciousness of the subject, but is the unreasonability of reason itself, or a word in Hegel would be the inneres Ausland, the internal foreign territory of language, the unspeakable plenitude that language can never capture, but which gives language its meaning, this unconscious. Zizek describes this as, imagine you're playing a piano and you've got one line for the left hand, one line for the right, and then there's a center line with a bunch of notes in it that you can't play because you don't have a third hand. And then you just start masturbating or something, because you're like, where do I get this third hand? Do I have like an arm, or do I have to get hard to play this third thing? And you realize it's impossible and there's no chance. The German term, yeah, and here, I'll do that. Inneres Ausland. But I was just saying to Joey really briefly, I meant for it to be very brief, that it just seems like a lot of where Deleuze is coming from, or where Deleuze and Guattari, I don't know how they wrote these paragraphs and chapters. I don't know how they kind of tossed it back and forth, or if one did a chapter and the other did the next chapter. I don't know who wrote this piece of text I just read, but it was one of them. And they were talking about this connection to nature, and it seemed like schizophrenia was an integral part in defining or conceptualizing this connection to nature, or this connection to the world. This big, and I read the intro by that guy Sears and by Foucault, and they were talking a lot about connection to the nature or connection to the world, to pull you out and get a breath of fresh air, and to swing open the door of your big stuffy psychoanalytic analysis room and to let the sunshine in, or whatever, like Judge Schreiber did, or something. He seems really intent on letting the sun in, getting a breath of fresh air, connecting to the world, right? And I was just trying to make a little pithy thing to say, it seems like a lot of psychoanalytic circles tend to not care about doing that as much. They tend to, it's like Zizek said in an interview in a movie where he's like, all that stuff out there, I don't care. It's bullshit. It's out there. It's stuff. It's garbage. It's trash mostly. It's like rocks and dust and dirt and filth and water. I really don't care about it that much at all. And I don't know, I feel evil for doing that. And I guess I am, whatever. And they said, and then they're like, oh, well, so you care about what's inside? He's like, no, I look in there and I just see more of the same. It's just crap. It's just bullshit. I just lie to myself and I'm stupid and like evil. I don't like what's in here. I don't like what's out there. I don't care about it. It's a very weird, very Hegelian kind of notion of spirit or a person. Anyway, I wanted to go to the body without organs. Okay, so on the body without organs, my understanding of the body without organs, this is something that gets me into a very interesting question, or not interesting in general, or objectively, or whatever. To me, it's interesting. I have an interesting question, or a question that I'm interested in. I guess, of course, I do. If I have the question, I'm sure it's interesting to me. That's why it's a question I have. But it's to the room. It's to everybody. Okay. I have a couple key questions about this reading. I found it very puzzling at certain points that didn't. And there were points that really didn't make sense. But I'd like to kind of. I'm going to give my basic understanding of what a body without organs is, and then I'm going to see if it gels, and then if not, whatever, and I ask a question. Okay, first off, body without organs. I first read about it in this, I mean, I've heard about it plenty from a bunch of people in this Discord server I'm in. But anyway, in the intro by, what's that guy, Sears or whatever, he talks about body without organs as a part of this spectrum, this gradient between the body without organs as this dejected I am nothing kind of stance, and the schizo desire analysis stance, which is I am God, I am everything, you know? And he kind of points to this gradation dichotomy thing. And that kind of confused me, but I was like, okay, maybe I can buy that. But then as I got into the text, they start talking about the body without organs. Initially, they talk about the body without organs on page 8, I believe. Yes, on page 8. That's where they around page 8, page 7 and 8. These paragraphs aren't numbered, unlike Hegel, whom I just, you know, so it's a little difficult. But body without organs being this non-productive thing or stance, this desiring machines only working when they break down, and the schizophrenic table is basically a desiring machine that is broken down and is thus a body without organs, a body without image in a realm of anti-production. The realm of anti-production being this sort of, to me, it registered as this like counterpart to the productive enterprise, I guess, which all things are constantly productive. And so there's this counterfactual realm of the anti-productive, which reads to me as kind of Freudian. Yeah, dude. Yeah, Eric, you're very right about that. Hey, see, Hegel was so simple, it's clear, cut, and dry. You know, this is just a bunch of hoo-ha. No, sorry, I'm making a joke. So they ask a very interesting question. Here's my point, and at the end of my talking. They ask a very interesting question on the beginning of section 2, the body without organs, on page 9 of the edition that I have. Deleuze asks a question that was in my mind, and I always like it when authors do that, is when they can see what's in here and they ask it on the paper. And it says, are bodies without organs and desiring machines in some sort of conflict? Because it seems as though bodies without organs resist machines and connections, and machines, weirdly, arise or have their genesis in this conflict between the body without organs and the desiring machines. And I said, my question is, what? The machines arise out of the conflict with machines? What about the first machine? That's my first thing. Second, this unproductive attitude, they call it a socius or a socius. I don't know how to pronounce that, but a socius. This unproductive this unproductive attitude, which is involved in all social and desiring production, and they call it the earth or the tyrant or capital. This illustration of capital as a body without organs made a lot of sense to me, or at least it kind of started to register a little bit, because I read volume 1 of Capital, and I kind of, muddled through that. But capital is the body without organs of the capitalists. It reproduces itself in and from production. It bewitches the world as this apparent quasi-cause of all industry, production, and recording. But then there's this question I still have, because it starts to get into the production and recording thing, and I trust me, I got questions about that too. But before we get into that, before we even get there, I have several questions about everything prior. And it's about schizophrenia and nature, and it's about schizophrenia and machines, or about bodies without organs and desiring machines. I have 2 basic questions. First off, way earlier, when they're trying to get to this body without organs, they're talking about schizophrenia. On page 5, there's this discussion. Where the distinction between man and nature. Page 5 is talking about this distinction between man and nature, saying we shouldn't invest ourselves into this distinction between man and nature. Man and nature are one and the same producer product, right? This block of becoming, this producer product. And in this space of the man and the nature being the producer product, it is evident, or at least easy to believe, that the schizophrenic, I'm saying the, which might be a little, jumping at the gun here, but schizophrenia or the schizophrenic is in a way a model for homo natura, right? And in order to sell me on this point, they said schizophrenia is like love. And I didn't know what in the HE double hockey sticks they meant there. I had no concept of what, because he says that the artificial schizophrenia, prolonging it indefinitely, homo natura, the goal is the end in itself. Schizophrenia is like love. There's no specifically schizophrenic phenomenon or entity. Schizophrenia is the universe of productive and reproductive desiring machines. Universal primary production is the essential reality of man and nature. Now, before you have an answer to me, I wonder, how is schizophrenia, what is Deleuze's conception of love? That's my because that does not sound like love to me. That does not sound like love in any sense to me. It sounds like a very weird interpretation, like almost like Plato's ideal of love. It sounds like a Plato style idea of love to me. And I know that that's probably not right and probably offensive to the senses of the Deleuzians here. But are they quoting D.H. Lawrence there? Okay, D.H. Lawrence says of love, we push. So D.H. Lawrence is also the one saying that schizophrenia is like love? No, D.H. Lawrence talks about love, but then they move on and say schizophrenia is like love, without, wait, is that all? No, yeah, there's no there's no quotation there. There is no specifically blah, 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 blah. Okay. So anyway, what do they mean by that? What is their conception of love? Is their love this platonic, oh, you love a woman, and then you love her beauty, and then you love beauty itself, and then you love people, and then you love everything. You love the good. You love goodness. There is no specifically, object. Love is everywhere, whatever. I don't know. I'm really misinterpreting it just to spark conversation, okay? I'm going to be the dunce hat, okay? But the next question I have is back to now, okay, all the way back to page 9 in section 2, where they're talking about schizophrenia. This is a two-part question. What is their concept of love and how is schizophrenia love? That's my first question. Second question is, are bodies without organs and desiring machines in conflict? I think it seems like it, and I wasn't told otherwise. How is it that schizophrenia or the schizophrenic is both a body without organs and some sort of universal producer that is overstuffed with schizo desire? If the schizophrenic position is one of conflict with machines and interconnectedness, how is it both a body without organs in resistance to interconnectedness and to machinery, right, on the first hand, where all the machines are many nails piercing into the flesh, blah, 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 Tetsuo the Iron Man, you know what I mean? On one hand, you've got that, and on the other hand, apparently it's an overstuffed table full of junk that seems to be this schizo desire connected to nature that's also really lovey, I guess. What is going on? Do you see my confusion? Okay, that's my two-part confusion. And if any of that I need to recapitulate, I will. I apologize for the haste by which I am elucidating these points and questions, but that's it. That's my time.
I'll answer one of your questions. Well, I mean, I'll answer it in the sense of like I have a thought about it. In terms of is the body without organs and desiring machines in conflict? And I kind of attaches to, and I may be totally off base here, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say. I have a really hard time with this body without organs thing. I mean, and I'm sure you guys have looked it up and all that, and you find out that, there's a lot of, dissenting or discrepancies between what people think it is. I mean, really, and I think that I think it's purposefully written that way. But I mean, when I'm reading it, if we want to make an attempt, and this is is it in conflict, right? And it is to me in the sense of like desiring production, which they say on like the first page that it's somewhere similar to the id, the Freudian id, and that would be also placing it. And so I'm trying to sort of like locate these things in some sort of metaphorical geographical space is kind of what I'm trying to do. And so the id is the Freudian id is somewhere in the neighborhood of the Lacanian real. And with that, the bodies without organs are somewhere around the Freudian superego, the Lacanian symbolic order, and the Althusserian ideological state apparatus. That's my reading of it. And I'm wondering, if that is what you're asking, Hunter, and if that maybe sparks somebody else to say something, because again, I'm struggling with this, like, it's the locate. I'm trying to locate these terms. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think kind of the conceptual architecture that they go about with this that I think is helpful to seeing is they talk about these three syntheses. And, you know, we've only really, so they did cover the third one a little bit, but mainly just the first two, mainly really first one more so. I think going over those would probably be helpful, and how they relate to the body thought organs, because the body thought organs, yeah, so it's without a doubt, it's a literally a complex concept in that it's folded together with many other concepts, and also the concept changes from, okay, so Deleuze introduced it in logic of sense. So he didn't come up with the term. Artaud came up with this term. So he was I don't know that a lot about him, but he was a schizophrenic, I think he was a playwright and a poet and wrote a lot of stuff. So for the UTSA people who know Alistair, he said that he looked up one of his books in the library and that it was full of what he described as kind of a lot of gibberish, and that he was surprised that a university press published it. It's, yeah, but so maybe we'll eventually get into some of the stuff in the logic of sense and how it relates to this, because I think that's pretty interesting and actually kind of reveals quite a bit of it. Oh, Nathan, so you're familiar with Artaud? That's great. Yeah, but I don't know much about Artaud except kind of what I've somewhat taken from reading Deleuze. But so he gets this term from Artaud, though, body thought organs, and kind of the fundamental idea behind it is, okay, so they say in Anti-Oedipus, this is actually a misnomer. The body without organs, think of it as it's literally a body, but it's not so much a body that's literally without organs. It's a body that is opposed to the organism, and the organism is connected with the organization of the organs. So this is kind of the main idea that is prevalent all the way from Artaud to logic of sense to a certain degree, and Anti-Oedipus and 1,000 Plateaus, where, so I'm more familiar with body thought organs as it's used in 1,000 Plateaus, which really stresses that idea. Oh no, Deirdre, you mentioned Nick Land. Okay,
I just meant if Alistair thought this was
yeah.
Alistair's,
so
Are we, sorry, oh, sorry, Deirdre, were you going to say something?
no, not at all.
Okay, sorry. At a simple level, I was just wondering, and I'm not a philosophy student, so pardon the more simplistic jargon here, but I'm just trying to understand this idea of body without organs too. And I read the whole book, like a few years ago, and it was relevant to when I was reading it from a literary perspective. And you know, there were certain ideas I thought were central to the work, which will come up, I guess, in future sessions. But when it comes to the idea of the body without organs, the way I saw it was just, you know, the opposite of something with organs is something inorganic. And when we're talking about something inorganic, we're talking about emotions being denied of that whole system. We're talking about the state of advanced capitalism that we actually follow and apply in our lives. And so we're talking about basically operating at that level where we're at the center of everything to do with reason and rationalism, and which is why, and which we all know is limited in its own sphere. And which is why I think the whole idea was to move us away from that intricate rationalism that goes on even in Freudian psychoanalysis, and to tell us just to go out there for a walk. I think these are ideas which are being spoken about here, but sadly, at least for me, I'm trying to work my way through, of course, the technical jargon here. Please correct me. I'm very open to being corrected if I'm wrong in any of this, and I would love to hear from all of you.
Okay, nobody's, no, okay, yeah, guess what, Chase, I'm cutting you off. Yeah, no, I'm just, before you even start. Yeah, no, I find that to be very interesting, and it, because it at least points to one thing, which is, or I mean, well, not because what you said only points to one thing, is because my mind, I'm a simple guy and I can only handle kind of one task or thought at a time, or I'll kind of short circuit. And the thing that I'm thinking about now is that phrase you said, that thing opposed to the organism, because when Chase was describing the body without organs as this body without organs, I was still having some, I am now, I say that as if it was in the past tense. I am currently having some trouble understanding, but what you said, that it in a way stands, at the very least formally, opposed to what we would consider the organism or the organic, right? That was the thing that really, I was like, okay. Yeah, the structure of the thing defined by its organs, I didn't really, again, I'm sorry, didn't really understand, but the it being inorganic, that made sense to me, because I thought about, well, what do they say in psychoanalysis? Because my background, my brief, like I said, foray into psychoanalytic books and essays and stuff like that, and lectures, has mentioned something like this this inorganic thing that I tried to think, okay, well, it's this inorganic thing, but it's not like an inorganic thing that's out there and I can be afraid of it and shoot at it or something, like it's an object that I need to attack and draw a bow, like a border away from, and push it away. No, it's this unproductive attitude or thing involved in social and desiring production, this thing in the realm of anti-production. And so I was like, okay, imagining that it's always there with me, that I can't escape it. Those are the two rules I've got, is that it's this thing opposed to what I understand as the organic, and it's right there with me all the time and I can't escape it, because I'm a social thing, I'm a desiring thing. And so I'm tarrying with the anti-productive, anti-social, anti-desiring, blah, 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 right? So I'm with it all the time, but it's opposed to the organic. And I'm kind of an organic thing. And so I was like, okay, what does this remind me of? I didn't ask myself that. I just was kind of, alarm bells were going off in my mind. It was the theological. It's God or the holy or the, the divine, right? That's what it made me think of. And then it made me think of Judge Schreiber with God's sunbeams going all up in him. And so there's this faint line of light in my, like, I can kind of barely see these shapes starting to take form, I feel that now I just want to retrace my steps. So the body without organs is a complex concept of overlapping or interfolding, interconnected terms. And that's why, Saba, I think that there is no reason to apologize for any sort of difficulty with jargon, because I think, and I guess that's kind of what we're trying to get at in so many different words, is that as a complex concept, part of the job of the body without organs is to make you feel that, and Hegel gets at this with the notion of recoil. He says spirit is a bone. I always try to triangulate things through him, but body without organs in a way is eliciting that recoil, that sort of, oh, it's this inorganic, oh, it's this anti-productive, oh, it's that a body can't not have organs. And even as you said, and when Chase said it's literally a body without organs, imagine it kind of like that. I immediately thought, Well, literally is like a linguistic term, and that's kind of connected to image, and it's not supposed to be a body's image. And so tut tut, and I was ready to wag my finger. I was ready to be really uppity about that, you know? And this sense of recoiling at myself and at each other, I think, is a really pivotal part to this relationship that we have and are currently developing to the body without organs, that is constantly within this virtual, I don't know if virtual is the right word, but this virtual realm of anti-production constantly in my face, you know what I mean? So the body without organs is a complex concept of overlapping or interfolding terms and jargon, being this anti-productive, inorganic thing that rests in or alongside the organic, because I am organic and my desires are kind of like that in a sense. It connects us to the divine somehow, because I know that to me, at least, there's like a buzzword phrase in my brain that says the theological is the inhuman core of the human. I remember reading that somewhere. Some smart guy, some big old smart guy said that once in a video I was watching. And it stuck with me that the theological, the theological is the inhuman core of humanity, or of the human. So would it be fair, and this I'm remounting my questions now, to say that the body without organs, in a way, is sort of the inhuman core, not just of humans, which is where psychoanalysis places theology, but perhaps the inhuman core of humanity in the broader sense, like where they were discussing earlier, you see yourself everywhere. D&G, whoever it was talking incessantly in this chapter about, you see yourself everywhere. You feel like the world is a constant reaffirmation of your previous beliefs, of your reasonability and your capability as a subject, We're constantly seeing ourselves reflected back at ourselves in our environment, right? Or at least we take our environment as some sort of acquiescence or affirmation of our preconceived understanding of our indomitable, dauntless spirit, we confront nature or whatever, or we confront ourselves on the analyst's couch, really, as this rational spirit. And in these endeavors of extending our spirit or our mind, sorry, I'm using all these stupid terms. This psychological process of maneuvering through myself and my process product, the world, there is this constant, almost effervescent, sort of ubiquitous inhumanity. And with that inhumanity, okay, and Joey just said a phrase in the chat, that inhumanity is the table that no longer serves as a table, the overstuffed production of desire or desiring production. What does it do? Why do I care about it? That's kind of my next thing, I guess, is I guess the body without organs is this term that's wrapping up all these things: the inhuman, the theological, the disjunctive, the overstuffed, the anomalous, the edge, the boundary of the pack of wolves. Sure, I guess. Why do I care? I guess is my next thing.
1,000 Plateaus.
Is that in 1,000 Plateaus they start talking about the wolf pack?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Also the anomalous too. Yeah, that's all from the Becoming Plateau. Yeah.
Well, I read a paper by Catherine Malibu called "Who's Afraid of Hegelian Wolves?" Where she confronts Deleuze, basically saying, okay, a bunch of Hegelians don't like Deleuze, and they try to do the Hegel thing of like saying, well, the dialectic already thought of that, duh. And she was like, that's stupid and tired and done and old hat. And no, you can't just say that the dialectic already accounted for everything, okay? That's a cop-out. We got to actually take Deleuze kind of at his word, on his level. And a big part of that is, or a big part of her project in that essay, this is a 12-page essay, is kind of confronting the rhizome, the logic of the rhizome in its conflict with arborescence. And she's like, okay, what actually is going on here between this critique of arborescence and the project of rhizomatic unfolding or development or processal thinking, which is what Sears talks about as like the way out. This what do we do? This sort of way of living, this book on, which is why they call it an ethical book. That's why Foucault and this other guy, I think his name, again, I keep saying that name, but I never checked. It's this ethics. So Catherine Malibu is trying to say, okay, well, how can we take Hegel and his kind of unethical, shitty attitude about everything, and his insistence on arborescence, and we kind of make it, kiss with, making kiss and make up, Deleuze and his ethical insistence on rhizomes and on the blocks of becoming, the ontological jazz, but that aside, all that is to say, this particular instance here, I'm using that lingo to try and make sense of what I'm getting here. This body without organs. I'm questioning here and now, once again, the body without organs. It was Nathan that said this. Okay, I now have a new gimmick, a new trick up my sleeve to make this slightly make sense to me. Lacan's notion of the real, as I understand it, is the thing outside of direct experience, the thing directly outside of experience. A good illustration of this that I've heard is the steel mill worker in Middle America. His son dies in a fire in his house, and he goes in to save his son, and he sees nothing but a charred corpse and runs away and goes, "Oh my God, I'm so scared and traumatized. Ah, geez." And then years pass, and he goes to work. And he says, "Oh, I hate this stupid steel mill job. I hate this job. I can't validate myself. I have no." Oh, geez, I accidentally disconnected my headphones, but I hope that I still sound normal. I hate my job and I hate my life, and I'm not working for anybody. I just want to go home and I want to drink beer and pass out. I just reconnected my headphones. I hope I still sound normal. I want to go home, drink beer, pass out. So then he goes home, drinks beer, passes out. When he falls asleep, well, not necessarily the noumena, but it follows slightly different rules. But he passes out, and then he's like, "Oh, finally, I can dream, I can rest, I can escape into my sleep from this horrible toil," right? And then he goes to sleep, and he sees horrible nightmarish visions of his burning child. And he says, "Oh my God, this is so horrible and traumatic." And he wakes up in a cold sweat. Well, at least I don't have to do that. I can't wait to, thank God I'm back here in nice, peaceful reality. I'm going to go to my stupid day job and forget about all that mess of my dreams. And then he goes to his stupid day job and says, "Oh, I can't wait to escape this into my dreams." And he's just caught like a monkey in the middle where the banana is being tossed between two poles. You know what I mean? So the real is this thing constantly outside. He's jumping ship into a vessel of escape constantly. Right? And the real is the thing he's not confronting, constantly waiting right past the door to pop him one. The real is the thing, and then he never actually confronts the real. When he jumps from to and fro, he never actually finds the real. It's not that the real is rearing its ugly head. It's constantly there threatening him. And yeah, Chase, kind of like a fang noumena, I suppose, but probably different in some important way. But I'm saying, is the body without organs like that? That's my question.
Oh, go ahead.
Obvious, a body without organs is impossible. I mean, in the way we conceive it. But if what they're saying has something to do with why the body or how the body acts the way it normally does, and what role do the organs play in the functioning and the maintenance of any body. And if that's a reference point for all living things, then the body without organs could be applied to animals and plants, potentially. And would it be that the organs are interfering? We need to sleep, we need to eat, right? I mean, there's certain human things we need to do to maintain ourselves, but that interferes with us thinking through things, right? With trying to understand the world. We have these bodily functions that cannot be ignored, or else it's literally would be destructive to our organism. And I don't know, I just was thinking, well, are the organs kind of the physical manifestation of this entity, which is physically surviving because of these organs, but that those could be interfering? And for some reason, I thought of a very odd example. Did you ever see the movie? It came out like 30 years ago, maybe longer, something like The Adventures of the Baron Munchausen. And I remember the King of the Moon, his head separates, and the King of the Moon's body is a gross pig who just wants sex, and the head is floating around and now can be talking about ideas and philosophy and beauty. And just thought I'd throw that out.
I was just gonna not to belabor Lacan too much, but I just wanted to respond, just to add a little thing on the real. Is that I mean, I think that's apt for sure, but also I think it's important to note that we're drawn towards the real. Like that's sort of like what das Ding, you know, that Lacan talks about. That's the jouissance. Those are all aspects of the real, right? Like and it manifests itself. You get a I mean, it's always deferred, it's always out of reach, as you say, but it's in orgasm also. So it's sort of this thing that's like unbearable, but we are constantly trying to bear it. Like we're, like it's this thing that is repellent but irresistibly attractive. At least that's the way that I understand Lacan. In that sense, I would think that I don't know. So you're saying you think that it's closer to the real than to the symbolic order, Hunter?
I mean, as far as I understood, I thought if let's say that Deleuze, I mean, I've heard one of my favorite parts of intellectual or academic history is like the drama when people talk to each other. And I've heard of like awkward interactions between certain thinkers, like between Lacan and Deleuze. I think Chase told me a story about Deleuze having a really weird interaction with Lacan one day at his office. Like Lacan was like really awkward and like kind of stuffy and was like, I need a student like you. And Deleuze is like, okay, what is this? Is this like, what are you doing? Why am I here? And I love moments like that. But let's just imagine that they were chill. Let's imagine they were chill, sociable, affable towards each other. I would imagine what I imagined, and tell me if I'm totally off base here, because I think you might be onto something. What I imagined was that the symbolic or not the symbolic order necessarily, because the symbolic order is like the whole thing. And maybe that's it. Maybe the body without organs is the symbolic order we're caught in. That very, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, maybe. But what I thought of it as was that the symbolic order, I guess I thought the real connected to the body without organs, because I thought of the virtuality and the ever presence on the borderline or on the edge of my experience, because I'm not a body without organs. I've never seen a body without organs, because I'm a dumb guy, I mean, as far as this book is concerned, I'm Joe Schmo, 1930s French guy. I've never heard about one of this. Is weird. I have a body without organs. What's this about? I've never heard of this. This is a bunch of hoo-ha. And I guess maybe they do repudiate all of Lacan's registers, the three registers of experience, the symbolic, imaginary, and the real. But I guess I figured that this anomalous character, this borderline virtual, unproductive, anti-productive, yet nonetheless ubiquitous status of the body without organs, or body without organhood, bodiness without organness, that to me smacked of the real, while the social edifice, according to Deleuze and Guattari, they would say, oh, well, it's this Oedipal mechanism, this Oedipal triangle that dominates and controls our lives. This is the social or symbolic structure that we subscribe to under the master signifier. Maybe they would say, oh, okay, Lacan, let's meet you in the middle here. And I mean, again, they do. And yes, I will, Deidre. They repudiate these registers of Lacan's, but maybe, like, again, if they were making an effort to meet in the middle, they might say, okay, Lacan, I guess we could say, you're right. People do tend to be caught in a social or symbolic order underneath or not under necessarily, but centered around a master signifier, right? Ending with some master signifier. And that master signifier being whatever, and always caught into the thumb of this master signifier. Well, guess what, Lacan? The master signifier here has a name, and it starts with O. And it's, they would say this Oedipal mechanism is the master signifier of the psychoanalytic mode, and it dominates us. And Michel Foucault would say, and that's fascism, baby. I feel like that's where I get that, is that the social or symbolic order under or with the master signifier would be the Oedipal mechanisms under the Oedipal triangle, or with the Oedipal triangle for them. But the body without organs is like this weird thing. I want to put like a capital W weird, like it's like weird, you know what I mean? And by the way, Deirdre, when I say virtuality, I just mean not technically present outside of like a formal presence, like a formal or counterfactual presence. Like if I give you a cup of coffee, and it's just a cup of coffee, or let's say I'm a waiter and you're at a restaurant and you say, excuse me, waiter, could I get a coffee without milk? And then I said, I apologize, but we don't have milk. We only have cream. I can get you a coffee without cream. And then you go, that's okay. And somebody asks, what's the like Jerry Seinfeld, what's the difference between coffee without cream and coffee without milk? And then I would say the virtual. There is no difference. It's just coffee, but there's a virtual difference. That's where I think the virtual lies. Anyway, that's it.
All right. So I think I can cover a little bit of the virtual and also the body without organs simultaneously, because I think they're definitely connected. Although they don't tend to use the term virtual in this book exactly, but they're connected. Okay, so I came up with this example. I think I found it in my phone that I said this to my friend something like 4 months ago, and I want to explain how I found it. Okay, there's imagine a sword, and don't think imaginal. There's a sword, and it's got its form. It's got a substance. You can give a whole kind of Aristotelian kind of idea of it. And think of that as a body, and as an organism, that's kind of its structure, or its substance form in this kind of hylomorphic Aristotelian way, and it's stuck in that mold. The body without organs would be something like the real potential in the sword, the body of the sword, the materiality of the sword, to be able to be melted down and then recast as something else. So virtuality, it means real potential for the most part. And this is also, I think, what they're getting at with the body without organs in kind of the broad sense, in the sense that there's a body, which, okay, so for them, the concept of a body is so broad intentionally. They're very much challenging the idea that not only that, you know, connecting a human body, that's what we think of as a body, that they're trying to get us to think outside of that the organism is the body, and instead think of basically anything that's finite and bounded and material. That's basically a body. And actually you can go even further to see ideas are bodies too. It gets into like Spinoza and parallelism and whatnot, but almost everything's a body. Okay, but the fact that any kind of fixed state or organization, so they think of the organism as a kind of totalizing unity, in, you know, like as like in the post-structuralist sense, where that's like the worst thing ever, you know, is to have like a unity, like a totalizing unity that collapses distinctions with the things. Okay, so I think one good example of how they're using the word organism here is, okay, Plato, the Republic, kind of like an organic city-state, the polis, how you have this fixed kind of segmentation of three classes, you know, the guardians, and then the auxiliaries, the soldier people, and then you got, who are these people at the bottom, the working class, basically.
Yeah, craftspeople and farmers, I call them the productive class or the producers.
Yeah, so you've got this very strict three-part kind of structure, and that is what creates this harmony, this organic harmony in the city, is the fact that it's kind of segmented, and that what is justice? Justice is every part doing its own fixed purpose. And what is an organ? An organ is just a function of something. So in the Greek etymology, it refers to basically a function, that it's a purpose, it's a kind of teleological thing for something else. That's probably not the best explanation, but okay, so the fact that these different classes in this organic city, they're there just for the whole of the harmonic totality of the city, of the polis, and that's what it's all about. And you know, everything else, its goodness is just relative to how much it can just fulfill its function as a part of a larger whole. So that's kind of the organic totality that they're against. And so this is all kind of body without organs in a very broad sense. But okay, the big thing here, and I think people are, I mean, it is legitimately very confusing. So in Anti-Oedipus, they use the body without organs in multiple ways. There's several different types. And so there's a different type and function of the body without organs for each of the different syntheses. So the big one is, okay, the body without organs, it has a capacity to attract and also to repel. So they're, in this section that we read, they're mainly talking about that anti-productive element. So that has to do with the second synthesis of recording. This has to do, and this is about a repulsion of the desiring machines and whatnot. So this is the idea kind of where you could have, okay, you've got all these constant connections going. And this actually, Nevin, you wrote something in the chat about the, you know, the flows and whatnot. So that's what this is. That first synthesis has to do with those connections and those flows, how you have desiring machines. You've got the partial objects that I think they only mentioned briefly in here, but that's a huge thing in this whole book. And then yeah, so this is the second synthesis of recording. That's going to be connected with the with paranoia, the paranoiac. That's what repulses the desiring machines. So this is going to be connected with this idea of the surface that's impenetrable, that tries to repel all these desiring machines, like they're these awful, loathsome worms trying to get at me. And I need to instead have some kind of purity. Schreiber talks about this. It's like a pure body and whatnot, and get these things away from me. These bad partial objects, these desiring machines and whatnot, which those aren't exactly the same thing, but whatever. Okay, so that's one of the major types of body thought organs that is operating here in this section. But then, okay, that gets even more complex, because then they talk about the whole social thing with it. So they bring in all the Marx stuff, and I think that Hunter, you said that helped you somewhat, and I think it is a decent explanation for it. Okay, so this is the aspect of the body thought organs that they call the socius, which that's kind of the social body. It's, you can think of it as, the body politic. So Plato, his Great Republic, that's going to be very much when he talks about the body politic there, when Aristotle talks about it, when Hobbes talks about it, they're talking about the socius as, I'm not sure exactly why they call it that. I've never really looked into that, but either way, that's what this socius is, and that's going to be a huge part later in the book. But here, so when they're talking about Marx, so Marx actually had an idea of an inorganic body. That's what they're referring to, like the body that Marx talks about is this labor force. So, okay, so my Marx is not very good. I've definitely not read volume 1 of Capital. I tried to, but I'll get around to it. Anyways, it's like 1,000 pages or whatever. So the idea is you've got this productive force, labor, and they're producing all this cool stuff. And you've got capital that comes in there and kind of appropriates that labor as part of this surplus value, I believe, something like that. Am I right, Hunter? I don't know.
The profit comes from not paying the workers the true labor value that went into the creation of the product.
Yeah.
According to Marx. Yeah. So profit is inherently illegitimate and exploitative.
Yeah, so the recording surface or register of this aspect of the body thought organs and the socius, the social body, that's going to be something that's going to say have some kind of a coding, a sign given for the production, and from that it will give a kind of somewhat false. I'm using these terms somewhat loosely. Like I could probably go back and all these things are wrong, really. But anyways, so there's this aspect of recording where the desiring machines that it in this case it's actually attracting them. Yeah. So this is the aspect that attracts the desiring machines in order to appropriate them with, I think this is what they're eventually going to call coding. I may be wrong with that actually. But I think, yeah, okay, I'm not explaining this Marx well at all, but either way, I mean, y'all can read, that aspect is the body thought organs for the socius, which is a specific part of this one synthesis. And then, so all the anti-production thing, which repulses, okay, so their idea of anti-production, they say they're getting this from, to a large degree, it's Bataille, accursed share. They say, yeah. So his idea of anti-production or expenditure, this whole idea of expenditure that Bataille was kind of using, that's going to be the production of anti-production now. And so we'll get into that. I think let's not get ahead of ourselves too much, but I think for right now, it's probably important just to see that the body that organs in Anti-Oedipus is operating on its multiple types, and even those types have multiple parts. But I think kind of the basic idea is generally that you've got an organized organism, and with what is organized, it's the organs. The body that organs is the thing that, in the same process of production that makes all the organs, that makes the organism, that makes everything, production of production, that also makes this body that organs, which kind of at the same time wants to, kind of rebel from that fixed organization and either will kind of repel aspects of it in order to kind of start over again. That's this kind of like catatonic body of that organs, or there's some kind of an attractive force where it has this one is kind of complex. I mean, they're all complex, but this one, the attractive force, it's got this kind of coating over these, the desiring machines that interacts with it. And then from there, it kind of creates its own sort of meaning for it. And that's going to be this whole thing about the socius that will come into play later. For right now, I think I'm not even sure exactly how to explain that in terms of something ordinary, quote unquote. So they use Schreiber as an example. So in Schreiber's case, I think what they talk about as like the miraculating, that's what Schreiber says. He says that there's these kind of nerves of God that kind of connect with him, and that he has kind of these special nerves that attract these souls, and that these souls, because of his special nerves, will come to his body and kind of try to feed off his energy, it kind of seems like, but that he sees himself as responsible for this production of them in a kind of indirect manner. So that's going to be the big thing. So this kind of connects with, okay, I won't totally get into it, but in the logic of sense, he has this idea of the quasi-cause. Well, actually, they talk specifically about that. So the quasi-cause is a kind of indirect sort of, it's kind of like commodity fetishism in the way that I was trying to get at earlier, in the sense that, yeah, you've got labor, producing stuff, but then you've got capital that says, oh, actually, I'm responsible for this. In the same way, you've got a little kid who's like, oh my God, you can't eat that pig. And like, well, where do you think bacon comes from? Like, what? It comes from the store. It comes from, HEB. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know. That make any sense to anyone? I've heard this multiple times from, it's always children that they're confused. They don't understand that hamburgers come from cows or that bacon comes from pigs. They think these things come from grocery stores. And I think that's kind of the ultimate kind of commodity fetishism, this idea that we have no idea the labor, the social relations that produce this. It's just a magic commodity. That's this kind of quasi-cause, and also this sort of miraculating aspect of desiring machines. Yeah, it's hard to get a kind of a concrete example for that aspect, but that is one aspect of the body that organs. And with that, I think I'm done for the moment. I need a drink of water.
You know, he keeps using this phrase. This is on page 10, kind of in the middle. He's talking about the socius, I think, on this page, which is the body without organs, or a type of. Anyway, he says in the middle, in fact, it does not restrict itself merely to opposing productive forces in and of themselves. It falls back on all production, constituting a surface over which the forces and agents of production are distributed. And that's where, then a few lines down, in a word, the socius as a full body forms a surface where all production is recorded, whereupon the entire process appears to emanate from this recording surface. And so that seems like you're saying that, that sounds like there's this one body without organs, at least in this particular economic social context, and it has this function, as it were, of opposing productive forces. So that's it, sort of, it tends to dissolve these connections. It sounds like you were saying with the sword, you've got these organisms, or these bodies, really broadly construed, like you say, which are these connections of different organs that are functioning in these different ways. And the body without organs, it sounds like one of the things it does is break apart these connections and dissolve them, and so that they can reorganize in other fashions. Like he says, the body suffers from being organized in this particular way. And the body without organs is this potential for dissolution and reorganization. But then at the same time, like you say, it serves as a recording surface. And so there's two things. Two of the things I'm struggling with. What does it mean? We're almost done, so I shouldn't probably bring it up at this point. We can talk about it next week. But what does it mean to fall back on production? He keeps using that phrase. The body without organs has this function of sort of breaking systems apart, but then it falls back on those systems and becomes a recording surface. I don't know why you need a recording surface or what that function is. And then the other thing, and it may be something you alluded to this too, I think it's after that happens, not that this is like a temporal process, but when that happens, then the system then appears that all of its functions are actually emanating from this body without organs, even though that's not the case. And so, like he said, in the economic case, it appears like everything's coming from capital, but that wasn't what was happening. You had these other relations, and then the body without organs falls back on that system, becomes a recording surface, and now gives the appearance that it is actually the source of all of these, of this whole social economic system. And so, again, it's late, we're almost done, but what is that falling back? What is recording about? And then this sort of deceptive appearance of, that it's the origin of all things. Maybe I should just leave those as ending questions, unless that's unfair.
Yeah.
Throw out these really meaty questions. Okay, let's stop now.
I think that sets it up well for next time, because what you did a good job. I think it's self-explaining it by giving your question. But Nathan, I think you're gonna say something.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and it's a question for everybody, but Nevitt too. I'm not gonna be here next week, but is there some kind of discussion group, right? Something that's like I don't know if it's some kind of, I haven't looked at it. I know there's an email, right? Is it like some kind of message board or something, or what is it?
Yeah, so we don't, the only time we have live discussions is on this Friday thing. But we had actually a guy who's not here a while back set up a Discord server for us. And so there's a Discord server. It looks like Hunter just posted a link to the Discord server. I got it. And if you look on there and you go to our Discord server, there is a channel for us. There's if you look at our resources, there's a summer literature seminar channel, which is happening on Monday nights. And then there's a channel for this for this discussion. Welcome to 2022 Summer Philosophy Seminar. And so, sometimes people will post resources or ask questions, or ongoing conversation will occur on that Discord server. So that's something, if people want to continue asking questions, and you can @ people and so on. So
Okay. And is it something that you guys are active with and everything? Like, because I won't be here next week, so if there's some things I can look at to see what I missed, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, also remember, we're recording this, and Chase is going to post the recordings.
Yeah, which I can post my YouTube channel in there, and we'll have plenty of. So I didn't want to kind of overload people with a bunch of homework, which I have a tendency to do. So basically, I wouldn't wait till after the first meeting. And now, guess what? Y'all have homework. No, not really. But okay. So basically, there's a lot of there's questions about secondary sources and whatnot. So on Discord, I'm probably going to post something on there, some kind of thread about all the secondary sources that I'm aware of, and not only just kind of the, there's two kind of regular guidebooks, Eugene Holland and Ian Buchanan. Is that it? I think, whatever. Two.
I have that.
Yeah. So there's those, which I kind of started reading the Eugene Holland one. And so there's also, okay, I'm already talking about it instead of, I'll post something in the Discord about those. Okay, but one last thing. Okay, so Joey, you mentioned the a user's guide to capitalism and schizophrenia, Brian Masumi. So that is not a guidebook to this. It is not. It's a very good book. It's really good. But that is, it's more kind of like inspired by capitalism and schizophrenia, as in the volume 1, Anti-Oedipus, volume 2, 1,000 Plateaus. And then it's kind of something extrapolated in the spirit of capitalism and schizophrenia. It's great, but it is, if you read it as a guide, it's not a guide. It's just kind of, Brian Masumi's, I think he's great. Yeah, he's Canadian. Wow, amazing. Yeah, so there's a lot of other stuff. Okay, maybe a 906. Are we okay? I'm gonna try to post a link right now to, hold on one second. So John Protevi, he has this website that has a bunch of stuff. So he has a class, I think, in just like Deleuze and Guattari or something like that. And he has a lot of great outlines and notes and all these things. I'm going to find it real quick and post it in the chat because it's quite wonderful. What are some other resources? So most of this, I'll make a thread and I'll post a bunch of stuff, but this is one I'm going to post in the chat because it's very helpful. So there's a Google Drive. If you go to the, maybe I'll just link that. So here's the Google Drive. Also, yeah, I can post this in the Discord. There's a lot of outlines there. I find those pretty good, although it doesn't have that many, I think, for the first chapter. I think there's a lot for the third chapter, which that's kind of where it gets into the kind of the social, kind of political stuff more so. But yeah, I'll post something in the Discord. Yeah. Hunter, I never answered your question about love. I just realized, but that's because I don't
cares?
really know.
Yeah, love is stupid and overrated.
I totally agree. I actually totally, yeah.
I thought the point of it being brought up that it was irrational.
Okay, people are starting to fade. Yeah, if you want to keep on or keep going with conversation during the week, or look at some of those resources. Chase is already practicing his professorial skills by assigning homework, and so anyway, yeah, that's all on Discord. So any last comments before we adjourn for the week?
Yeah, I don't know what this D.H. Lawrence quote about love. I have no idea what's going on. That's the thing.
So we end on a nice note of failure, lack, finitude.
Yeah,
I want to say it's good to see so many new faces in the group, and I do hope to see most of or all of you back again.
Yeah.
It was a good session. We usually have good sessions with our small group, and then we've grown the group and had another good session. So
It was, yeah, very nice having some. I mean, I like you old guys who've been here forever. I really do, but it's nice having some new people with interesting questions and helpful ideas. So
thanks for having me.
Please don't leave. I mean, not me right now. Leave for now. For sure, I'm leaving. But I mean, like, yeah, I'm begging you and pleading in the most pathetic way possible. Please keep coming to these. Please, I love you all. Okay, that's all. I love you desperately and schizophrenically. Or yeah, I love it.
Oh, madly.
Yes, I'm madly in love with all of you. Madly in love.
I love you too, Hunter.
You
All right. Love you too,
Just you,
Chase.
Hunter.
All right, bye. Bye. Love you. Bye.